think Links is how we've kind of done it at Frederick High School.
Right.
But I think there are things that other schools can do that don't necessarily have a Links program necessarily. You know, and I think so much of even what I'm hearing is like just engagement of people. So a lot of Links is just talking to students and talking with students and humanizing them. Like, you are a human being with individual wants and desires and dreams and goals, and you know, and right now maybe they don't fit into what the standard program averagism is about, but just having that conversation with them and even the families. And so, you know, you mentioned being a child of the 60s. So I was born a little bit after that, but
I was technically born in the 50s.
Oh, okay.
Child of the 60s.
A little different generation. Okay, so, but the point is, even for my generation, I think my parents had become very accustomed to this averagism. And I remember as a child the California Achievement Test, and I remember these things in my head, and as a child these things were ingrained in my head, and I had a similar experience, and based on that CAT test is how I was able to, you know, get into honors classes and things of that sort. And my parents were both, you know, college educated, so I think I did have a huge advantage from some of my classmates. I don't think I was any more intelligent than they are. I don't, you know, and I really don't believe that at all. I didn't then, I don't think it now, but I think because of my parents and because of that testing standard that was there. So it's really rethinking. I guess I know standardized testing is something that's kind of, we have to do it. But getting outside of the testing, like, how can we support our students individually? Like, and that's, so even if you don't have a Links program at your school, you know, how do I support this child individually? Like, what do they want to do? And we have so many resources already available to us in Frederick County, in the system and in the community. I think we are very privileged in our community in general. I think we have a very supportive community that wants to help our kids and wants to help our school system, but they just don't know how right now. I think we have parents, how can I support you? And even with Links, we've got businesses contacting us, like, how can we support you? How can we help? I think people are very hungry and thirsty to support our kids right now. And so whether it's at Links and you're providing the Links partnership, or whether it's CTC or whatever program it is, like just finding a network inside of a school to just find different tentacles and pathways for kids to be successful and for them to feel like, hey, this person listened to me. You know, this person didn't label me. Like, you know, this person didn't pigeonhole me or didn't track me or didn't, you know, see me as less than because I didn't score on a certain test. So I think, I don't know, for me, it just goes back to just the conversation, the relationship. And it's tough when you have a classroom full of kids and it's like 30 to 1 or sometimes 35 to 1. And, you know, there are situations like 40 to 1. And I just think that if we have the time, we can make the time. I'll put it that way for me.
And I think a lot of our high schools are taking advantage of, I know Frederick calls it the advocacy block, you know, others call it flex, Patriot time, whatever it may be. But that is another opportunity where you can have more time to maybe work with a child, build on their strengths, help them as they're struggling. And I do hear, you know, our seniors this year, as I went around and talked with them, many of them who had teachers saying to them, you're more than a number on a test, and helping them navigate through that. And I think we're going to see this generation of students are finding their voice. But the other piece that really resonated with me was a couple of years ago when we had the generational training, and they talked about, think about a young person who has grown up where everything is customized.
Yeah.
You only have to listen to the music that you like as opposed to whatever happened to be on the radio, because I lived in those 60s too. And, you know, or, you know, think about the number of TV channels that are available, or, you know, I'm on Google and can be finding out anything, you know. And so when that's your world, and then suddenly we try to fit you into and industry, it's no wonder they're saying to us, why do I have to take this class? How is this helping me? Where do I, you know, where do I need to go from here? But I also think some of our advocacy needs to come with our political leaders.
Yes.
Because right now in Maryland, we have this notion that we're going to give kids a test in 11th grade that will tell us, one test, are they college and career ready? And we know it's so much more than that. That's why our partners at Links are saying, let us go in and talk to them about soft skills. Let us teach them how to work with a team to solve problems. And I have to tell you, a call center, it would be so nice to talk to a person. And if they wanted to even give me 2 minutes, I'd be grateful because, it
Press
could,
this number first.
Exactly.
Everything's
again,
automated.
know.
that notion of we want to be efficient, we want to get things solved, but sometimes you just need a person who can help you navigate or who's willing to listen to you when you have a problem. So I saw this book as a way to start the conversation because if we're going to have a cultural change, it's got to be teachers, it's got to be community members, it's got to be parents, because I think parents are going to be, what do you mean my child's not above average?
Right.
I don't want anything that makes my child be Norma.
Right.
Because it's become so ingrained in what we expect and think.
Yeah, I'll say for me, I'm a parent too. So I'll speak from my parent perspective now. So I have 3 children in FCPS, and I've had to deal with some of like my kids in the whole above average, whatever the highly able learner, whatever these labels are. So as a parent, we've had to work with my children's school and just say, okay, I understand the test scores, I understand this and that, but I, as a parent, would be okay if my child's pushed harder. Like they will survive, and I understand that there is this rubric, and that after it's based on the average of what they are supposed to score or check off to do this. But at the same time, like my children will be pushed and they will be challenged. And as a parent, I felt like I had to push against the system for my children. And so, when I read this as an educator, but also as a parent, because it is tough to come against, I don't want to say come against the system, but when you're challenging the status quo, when you're challenging the average, when you're challenging the way things have been basically forever in this country, in this educational system, you do feel like David and Goliath. You feel like, okay, how can I make the least waves to make sure this is not taken out on me or my kids, but I want my kids to have what they need to be successful. And I think that, so it's partly this is the conversation starter for sure, but it's also empowering parents and educators to be able to operate in this knowledge. Because when you feel like you're coming up against the system, it's like, I don't have the resources, I don't have the manpower or the money or whatever it takes to fight this. Because
You're the expert, so I'm going to rely on you.
Yes,
Exactly.
absolutely. And it takes a lot for a parent or even a teacher, I would say, to even anyone in education. As superintendent, I'd imagine it's difficult to even challenge the system because we realize how big the system is. We realize how ingrained the system is in our culture. We realize how we are just completely challenging everything we've known from our childhood through education. And it is, for me as a parent, it's an ongoing conversation that we have with my children, or even with my daughter, for example. Just last week we had this conversation. She wants to be a chemical engineer, but she loves math, but it does not come easy to her. And she's like, but mommy, so-and-so over there, he got the problem in like 2 minutes. It took me like a whole hour to understand. And I'm like, but you got it. Like it took you an hour, but you got it, right? But no, mommy, but he took 5 minutes. Like, so even in these conversations with my children, we're having to kind of like teach them against the averages.
Right.
I'm like, okay, it's great that he can get it in 5 minutes. Like, kudos to him, honey, but you still got it in 60 minutes. It takes you 60. It may take that child a week, but you get it. But you get it. Right. But unfortunately, the way we have the system right now, it's not conducive to that. Because we do have to keep a schedule, we have to do these things, and our children feel it. Our children internalizing this, and for her, it's like, mommy, no, but he got it. But so it's taken me and my husband many conversations with our daughters and our son, who's in 3rd grade right now. But it's okay. Like, don't compare yourself to that child. Don't compare yourself to this child. You're fine. Like, you're on track. Like, you're making forward progress.
But what your daughter has learned about perseverance, not giving up. I think about the folks over at Fort Detrick who have our students there for the biomedical internships. And they said one of the things that they almost have to unteach the students is that failure is the norm.
Yes.
And, when you do it, that answer isn't going to come easy, and you have to keep trying. And so that soft skill, so to speak, is going to be as valuable for her in that field she wants to go into.
Or just in life, you know. And it's interesting, I have 3 grandchildren. I'm probably old enough to be your mom, but 3 grandchildren in FCPS, and they're in that, I can't think of the acronym, highly able. The HOW.
program, yeah.
2 of them that are in middle school. And when I read this book, I automatically thought of them and my daughter. So I've already told her, Erin, when I'm done, you've got to read this book, because I really think it would be beneficial for her and her husband to read this and understand, you know, and get knowledge from this book. I thought it was very well written, very readable, you know, and too bad we can't pass it around to every teacher. I will pass mine along to anyone that wants to read it.
Well, you mentioned Fort Detrick, because even during my advocacy days, when Fort Detrick came in to talk about us, because those internships are just awesome and they are highly competitive, I think I asked the question, like, can you talk about a 3.3 student applying for these internships? Because many of our kids think, oh, if I don't have a 4.0 or a 3.8, not to apply. And that's the response they gave us, no, we want the 3.2, 3.3 kid, because they know what it's like to persevere. They know what it's like to not get it on the first time necessarily. And so we've been trying to convey that to our kids and our students. It's, you know, you don't have to get a 4.0 to be competitive in anything, like in life and in career-wise and college applications. Like, it's okay, but the soft skills are what's going to get you there, the perseverance, the working hard. And this book goes to, I think, to the heart of that. But what so oftentimes when they're thinking, well, my test scores weren't so good, or I don't do things as fast as someone else. And I can't recall in the book, but I recall him saying somewhere, because of the teacher telling him the likelihood of him getting into, I guess, Wilbur, the college, the first college. And then he wanted to go to BYU. And then his advisor telling him it's like a 20% chance or whatever. It was something very low. Just him feeling very defeated and him feeling like just hopeless. I think the word hopeless stuck out to me. Because as I'm thinking about our kids, like, how many times do they come to school and they sit in class and for whatever reason they feel hopeless? And we have perpetuated that hopelessness in many of our kids. So whether it's because of this competitiveness of averagism, you know, they sit next to so-and-so and we celebrate different things, but we don't necessarily celebrate the kid that's uniquely him or herself. And I can't recall, I think it was BYU, but he talked about just feeling hopeless when his advisor gave him those dismal numbers. Instead of just saying, hey, listen, these are the opportunities that are available to you. Like, you can still be awesome and great. But I think that happens to a lot of our students right now.
So as parents, we're really good with the science of the individual. Now we just need to be part of the revolution.
Right.
To end average in our educational systems and in our culture, so that every student can build on those strengths, have those pathways that are going to take them to whatever success looks like for them. Thank you so much for reading, for discussing, and for spreading the word.
I will be glad to.
Thank you for joining us again to talk about the end of average.